and welcome back to Algebra 1. Our goal for today is to continue working with simplifying expressions using our power rules. At this point, I should know rules 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Today we are going to add in rule number 7. And at this point, our entire study guide paper after today will be completely filled in, and the problems are going to be every rule jumbled up, and things get a little bit tricky. So today we're focusing specifically on rule 7, but keep in mind that I always need to think I'm not done if I can still do any of the rules on my study guide paper, so be careful. So rule number 1, a product of a power. If my bases are the same and I'm multiplying, I simplify by adding up their exponent, would be your rule to get to your simplified version. Rule number 2, I have something that has a power and that power has a power. So these go together by multiplying to get the simplified version. Rule number 3, I have a multiplication problem. I'm allowed to share a power, right? So if inside my grouping is a times, then this power can get shared to everything on the inside. Remember, it has to be a times inside there, not an add or a subtract, so be careful. Rule number 4, if I have something that has a power of 0, so inside of here can be anything. If the power is 0, this entire thing gets replaced with a value of 1. Rule number 5, our stay or go rule. If I have negative exponents, they have to go from their current location to the opposite location and become a positive exponent. So 2 to the first stays on the top. It stays as 2 to the first. Even if this was negative 2 to the first, it would stay on the top. I'm seeing that mistake. The base can be negative. The exponent shouldn't be, so be careful. All right, so a to the third would stay, b to the negative 2 would go to the bottom and become b squared. On the bottom, c to the first would stay, e to the negative 5 would go to the top and become e to the fifth, and d to the third would stay on the bottom in its current location. I'm doing stay or go because the little number is negative, not the big number called the base, so be careful. All right, rule number 6, which we added in yesterday, a quotient of powers property, says that if I have division instead of multiplication, if I have division and my bases are the same, I simplify by subtracting their powers. Subtracting. And at this point, I should have rules 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 all filled into my study guide page. So we're adding in rule 7. Rule 7 is very similar to our rule number 3. All right, so rule number 3 says, if inside of here I have multiplication, right here is a times, then I'm allowed to take this exponent and share it to the items on the inside. And while I share it, I might have to use rule 2. Like in this problem, I would have to use rule 2 where I'm taking a power to another power. All right, and this would become b to the 2 times 4 times a y to the 3 times 4, which would give us a b to the 8th, y to the 12th. All right, that's our rule 3. Rule 7 is very similar, but instead of having multiplication inside of here, we are going to have division. So if inside our grouping is a times or a divide, which remember will look like a fraction, then I'm allowed to take that power and share it to the items on the inside. When I share the power, I might have to use rule 2 when I'm sharing something that has a power to something else that already has a power, so be careful. So rule number 7 says, and it works the same as rule 3. So nothing's really new today. It's just what we're allowed to share to. It says, if I have a quotient, meaning a division, or what will look like a fraction, then I'm allowed to take that power and share it to the stuff on the inside. Power of a quotient property. All right, so these two things, right, this is the one we just did. I have a times in here, so I was allowed to share that power or share that exponent of 4 to the things on the inside. Today, rule 7 says inside of here, I have a quotient, which is a fraction, a divide problem. If that's the case, then I can take the power and share it to everything on the inside. So this 2, exponent 2, can go to this 2, and it can go to the 3. And we'd end up with 2 squared on top, 3 squared on the bottom, which would give us a 4/9. Now, be careful. These 3 things are very different. This problem has an add on the inside. I cannot share the power of 2 to the items on the inside. And in fact, that's already in its most simplified version. In this case, there would be nothing I could do because I can't share the 2 to the inside stuff. Same thing if this was a subtract here. It would be done. We couldn't share that exponent to the stuff on the inside. Different from these two that have multiplies and divides on the inside, where I'm allowed to share this 2 to everything on the inside. And this would become 2 squared times a squared, or 4a squared here. And this would become share a squared over 2 squared, which would give us an a over 4. Right? I can only take the power on the outside and share it to the stuff on the inside if it's a times or a divide. No adds, no subtracts. And a lot of us have still been messing up on those types on our reviews. Be careful. So your example number 1. We want to simplify 4/5 to the 3rd power. Since inside of here is a division, which is shown by this fraction bar, then I can take that power and share it. I can share the 3 to the 4, and I can share it to the 5. And we would end up with 4 to the 3rd over 5 to the 3rd is our new version. Now, I have all positive exponents here, so no need for any going. Everything's going to stay. And I can evaluate 4 to the 3rd and 5 to the 3rd. When we evaluate that, we get a 64 over 125. Then from there, I would say, can that be simplified? Now, the way to check to see if it can be simplified is I use my fraction button, my A, B, C fraction button on my calculator. I go 64 fraction 125, enter. If it gives me back something new, then I know I can go further and simplify the fraction further. If it gives me back the same exact 64 125ths, then I know that I'm in the simplest version already. So in this case, 64 fraction button 125, enter, gets us back to exactly 64 125ths. So it's already simplified and we're done here. But please make sure to double check and make sure your final fractions are in their most basic simplified versions. All right, number 2, we have a 2/3 squared. All right, 2/3 squared, right? We can share here, we can share here because inside of here is a divide. That'll give us 2 squared over a 3 squared, which would give us a 4 over 9 when we evaluate. 2 squared is 4, 3 squared is 9. Now, 4/9, I want to check. Can it be simplified? 4, fraction button 9, enter. In this case, it gives us back 4/9 again. It can't be written any better, so we know we're in our best possible, most simplified version. All right, example number 3. We have a negative 3 over y to the 3rd power. Now, my suggestion to you is this negative sign, it can be out front like it is. It can be just on the top or just in the bottom. As long as it's only in one location, it means exactly what's written there. So the easiest thing to do is, instead of writing it out front, is to move it where the number is located as opposed to where the variable is located. So I'm going to take this out from here. And I'm going to say, well, I can write, it would mean the same thing if I attach it right there to that 3 in my fraction. All right, now, inside our grouping is a fraction bar, which represents a quotient, which tells me I can take the power and share it just like I can in rule number 3. So this 3 is going to go to the negative 3, and this 3 is going to go to this y. So we have negative 3 to the 3rd, and we have a y to the 3rd. Now, I promise people are going to mess up here and say, oh, I got to do stay or go, and make that negative 3 to the 3rd go. If we do stay or go, right, we have a negative 3, and this number right here is a positive 3. That's the one we're looking at. This guy right here, positive 3. It is already positive, so it stays. The big number can be negative all day long. It's the little number, the exponent, that can't be, so be careful. Same thing here, y to the positive 3 is going to stay. So from here, I need to do negative 3 to the 3rd. Now remember, when my base is negative, for my calculator to always give me the correct response, I want to take my negative number, put it inside parentheses before I do my power button, and 3, enter. So be careful. A negative 3 to the 3rd power is a negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3, which would give us a negative 27. All right, we still have y to the 3rd power on the bottom. All right, nothing else to simplify here. Nothing needs to go anywhere. This is a negative 27 to the positive 1. Please don't go with it. It is a stay. Good final simplified version. All right, example number 4, 7a over b to the negative 3. All right, inside of our grouping, this is a times right here, and this is a divide right here. Since we have all multiply and divide, then we could take that power and we can share it. It's when we have adds and subtracts that we can't. So any combination of multiply and divide, we are good. So this -3 is going to go to everything. It's going to this 7, it's going to this A, and it's going to end up going to this B to help us start our simplifying process. All right, we now have 7 to the -3 times an A to the -3 all over a B to the -3. Now, the common mistake here would be to evaluate that 7 to the -3, hit enter. But remember, that's going to give us the decimal version of the simplified fraction, which we don't want. I will never, ever, ever put a negative exponent in my calculator to do the evaluating. It has to be positive before I evaluate it. So we're going to do stays or goes here. All right, these are both negative exponents. They both go to the bottom. This is a negative exponent. It has to go to the top. So everything's flipping locations. The top stuff's going to the bottom's coming to the top, and nothing is staying because they all have negative exponents. So we now have a B to the 3rd on top, a 7 to the 3rd times A to the 3rd, or cubed on the bottom. All right, now that this is a 7 with a +3, I go to my calculator, I do my 7, power button 3, enter. That'll tell me the number that goes down here on the bottom in the denominator with the A to the 3rd. So be careful. All right, 7 times 7 times 7 would give us a 7 to the 3rd, which is 343. So we have a B to the 3rd all over our 7 to the 3rd value of 343, A to the 3rd. All right, all positive exponents now. 1 over 343 can't be simplified any further, so we know we're good here. Good final, box it on in. All right, last two. We have a negative times 4 divided by x to the 2nd. Now, here's where people are going to mess up. On the previous example, one of the previous examples, there was a negative here, and I said to put it with the 4. But it was inside of that grouping. This negative is outside the grouping, which is different. It represents that there's a -1 times on the outside of our group. And it has nothing to do with the power up top of 2, so be careful. That's a -1 to the 1st power, and it's just going to stay as -1 to the 1st. Inside of here, we have a quotient. So this power of 2 can only go to this 4 and this x. It has nothing to do with that outside value of -1, so be careful. All right, so we have -1 that's being multiplied now with 4 squared over x squared. Remember, a -1 with what looks like no denominator is just a 1. So I'm going to make that a fraction also. It's -1 over 1 times 4 squared over x squared. All right, let's simplify here. This is a positive exponent, so we can do that math. As long as the exponent's positive, we can go to our calculator and do our math. So 4 squared. So -1 over 1 times our now 16 over x squared. And then I have to remember, if I'm multiplying fractions, I can multiply everything on the top, get one big top number, and everything on the bottom and get one big bottom number. So -1 times 16 would just give us a -16 on the top. 1 times x squared would just give us an x squared on the bottom. All right, nothing left here to simplify. Please do not do stay or go with -16. It has a +1 exponent. It stays. It should not go. So be careful. It's only when our little number called the exponent is negative that we take it and move it somewhere. So be careful there. All right, last one. Number 6. 3 times x over 2 times y to the -4. All right, inside of our grouping, we have multiply here, divide here. Since it's any combination of multiplies and divides, not adds and subtracts, we can take our power and we can share it. And it goes to every individual item. There are 4 things there that -4 is going to get shared to. All right, this -4 goes to the 3. It goes to the x. It goes to this 2, and it's going to go to this y. And that'll help us start to simplify by removing the parentheses. So we have 3 to the -4 times an x to the -4 over a 2 to the -4 times a y to the -4. Please, 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 please do not type those into your calculator as 3 caret button negative 4 and 2 caret button negative 4 because it'll give you the approximate decimal instead of the simplified fraction version of its value. I will never put a power in my calculator until it's positive. So for all of these, they need to go. The things on the top are negative exponents, they'll go to the bottom. The things on the bottom are negative exponents, they're going to go to the top. So we have 2 to the 4th times y to the 4th now on the top, and 3 to the 4th times x to the 4th now on the bottom. The point of moving them is to make the exponent go from negative to positive. That's what we're simplifying by doing that. All right, from here, now that we have positive exponents here, now we can evaluate on a calculator. 2, power button 4, 3, power button 4, and so on. All right, so go ahead and do that part. 2 to the 4th would give us a 16. Y to the 4th. On the bottom, 3 to the 4th would give us an 81. So we now have an 81 x to the 4th. Now, before I call it done, this is a fraction of 16/81, right? 16 over 81. I need to use my ABC fraction button here and just make sure I want the simplest version of that number. Make sure it's all the way simplified. 16 ABC 81. If it gives me back something different, I have another step here. All right, I'm going to have a new top and bottom number. If it gives me back the same thing, then I know this is the simplest version. In this case, 16/81 cannot be simplified. Good, fine, I'll box it in. All right, let's fill in our last block of our study guide. Hit pause here if you need it. Fill in your rule number 7 of if inside of here is a quotient, I can share my powers. All right, hopefully you hit your pass. You filled in your thing. If not, rewind a little bit. Fill it in. See you guys later.